Alright, should be working now. Oop, need to mute myself. Alright, so what I thought I'd talk about today is a little bit of machine maintenance and your setup, your walk around, and a couple of key things to look for on the machine for most production and longevity life of the machine. And feel free to jump in the chat, ask questions, even if they're unrelated to what I'm talking about. I'll try to answer the questions for you. So getting started here, you got to remember, as soon as the machine starts up and it's hitting the ground, it's basically starting to beat itself to death. What the machine has to do is a hard job, so it takes everything working just right to get the most out of your machine. So when you're walking around the machine before you start, the main thing that you want to do is look for damage. Of course, check your conveyor belts, look for rips in your conveyor belts. If you see that your lower belt, like the cleats are getting shaved off of it, you want to look in that belly pan area where the lower tail pulley is and see if that's all packed in full of material, because when that happens, it kind of builds up and gets hard as a rock, and it'll start actually shaving the cleats off the rubber belt. So you want to look for that. Chip it out if you have to before you start, because you might think, oh, well, as soon as I turn the conveyor on, it'll get better, but it usually doesn't, because that stuff's so hard packed and dried in there. So you got to reach in there with like a pick bar or like a long screwdriver or something, or you can get up under there and chip some of it out and get it out of the way for you. That way you don't damage your belt. And then I would move on to the drum itself. Open the back door, look at the teeth, see that they're all even if you can, or preferably a fresh drum of teeth if it's a production job, and turn your sprayers on. On the 210, it's easy. There's a button right on the side panel there. You can turn the water on, see if all your sprayers are spraying. Now, I'm guilty. Hello. You're at Javed, I think that's how you pronounce that. You got a 200i, okay. Older models. Now, I'm guilty of not cleaning my sprayers out too sometimes, and usually the only byproduct of that is your teeth in that area are going to wear out faster. But if I'm doing dig outs, getting under the asphalt, stuff like that, I'm not too concerned about one being clogged. If I can fix it before I start, I do that. If I can't, then, I'll deal with it until the end of the day. And if I'm doing like a 2-inch mill, something like that, or 1.5 inches, or what, I'm not getting through the asphalt, or even a deeper mill and I'm not getting through the asphalt, then it's a lot bigger deal. You got to clean those sprayers out. So give yourself enough time in the beginning of the shift. My favorite tool for cleaning the sprayers is just a wire brush. Some people use like a tip cleaning tool for like a cutting torch. That'll work, but make sure you use a really small piece. If you use a bigger piece, what happens is you start wallowing out that brass sprayer nozzle, and then before you know it, it's just shooting out a solid stream of water instead of that nice fan of water that you want that actually covers the drum. You might think that, well, water's getting in there and that's all you need, but if you don't have that fan of water, it doesn't really do any good for the teeth. And then the kicker paddles too is something you want to take a look at. They'll start to wear like a curve like this, like a moon kind of. And then what happens is these low sides aren't kicking the material out. And so what basically ends up happening is it'll work. You'll get material into the conveyor, but the downside is that you're not getting all the material out, so there's more material stirring in there. And if you ever use those old rock polishers, things like that, where you tumble the rocks in an abrasive to polish them up, well, it's basically what's happening to your drum, but it's not polishing it and making it look pretty. It's actually wearing the holders out because you're stirring that material in there and it's not getting out. So we got somebody with a 2002 210 Fi, okay. So we're all talking about the same basic machine models here. So if the paddles start getting curved, what I've done to make them last a little longer is hard face up the tops to get them more square, as much square as possible. And that way they're going to get that material out of there. And worst come to worst, you can flip them, but I'm not a big fan of that. They're made to be flipped over to get the rest of the life out of it. But then what you've got is you've got a hole underneath it, and it kind of is doing the same thing. Not as bad, but it's doing the same thing. It's letting more material stay in there. And when it comes to holders, if you break a holder, as far as like letting the tooth get broken and then letting it get shaved into the holder, what that'll happen is that'll take the surface area for that tooth to ride on and gets rid of it. So what happens is then the tooth starts wallowing sideways in the holder, and that changes the angle of attack as it hits the ground, and the tooth won't spin anymore. So basically what I do is I keep the holders, the old holders that are still good when we change them. If they're still good and they've wore down nice, I keep a couple of assortments of different lengths so I can just change the holder out and get the pattern to still be pretty decent. Real quick, I'll answer the question for Tyler. Can you get the rubber pieces for the joystick? Are you talking about the bottom part or the top that covers the buttons? You can get both depending on what model machine you have. The newer ones are meant to be taken apart and you can change those. It's not easy, it's not fun, but it's a lot easier than buying a $2,000-$3,000 joystick. So the top button cover, yeah, you can get them. Some of the machines, the button screws out and you can change them, or there's screws in the side of the joystick where you can split the joystick and take it apart. If it's the older style that's all one piece, you're pretty screwed. You pretty much got to change the whole thing if it starts acting up. I wouldn't bother with it too much until it starts acting up and the buttons don't work anymore. Then bite the bullet and either buy a whole new joystick or take it apart and see if you can get it apart. A 2022 FI, I'm not sure going back to that year if you can take it apart. Yeah, I don't know the part number. I'm sorry. I could ask our mechanic because he just changed one on one of our machines. I can, I can get a hold of him if I can and ask him if he has a part number, and I'll throw it in the comments section. I'll pin a comment for you, but it might take me a bit. I just happened to be in the yard one day when he was working and I seen him change him one. I was like, wow, man, I didn't know you can get those. And he's like, yeah, it took me forever to find the part number. I think he had to actually get it from the factory. He had to call the factory to get the part number for it because it's not in any of the manuals or the books. And I think that's because they just recently in the later models made them changeable. But I would keep an old joystick if you have one that has a good rubber on it if you can. And you can, so it has Level Pro Active. It's only a few years old. So the 210 FIs, all the FIs should have the newer Level Pro that I know of. The 200Is have the older style. So there's a good chance they can be changed. But if you can't get the part number from your dealer, I would push on them to call the factory and find out and get it from the factory because they are available. They're just hard to get. And, you know, sometimes it's like going to Kragen when you go to the dealer, like they have no idea what you're talking about or where to find it. If they can't just punch up a name and get it in WeDOS, then, you know, they're pretty much no help. You're going to have to help me out with something to call you there with the green icon H.S because that doesn't help me much when I'm trying to refer to you. But you must have changed that regulator under there, that brass one. Yeah, Tyler, try that. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. It's a pain in the neck, but some parts are just like that. You have to get hold of the factory. Where did I leave off? Oh, sprayers. Another thing that'll help out with your spray bar to keep it clean, keep stuff from sticking to it and getting up in there and gumming it out, is putting soap in your water, actually. And you don't want to use dish soap. HS. There you go. Let's call you HS. You gotta be careful what soap you use. If you use Dawn, I'm guilty of this. I used to use dish soap. I thought it worked a little better because it was slipperier. But what actually started happening, and I never even thought it was an issue, and I didn't tell anybody that it was the issue because they would have came back to me, but kind of did some research, is if there's enough of it coming out and the ground is kind of wet still when they spray the oil won't stick to the asphalt. So I recommend laundry detergent, and very, very little. Fill the tank with water first, otherwise you get a big foamy mess, and put maybe half a cup to a cup in a full tank of water. And you'll notice a difference in the tooth wear, and you'll also notice a difference in the amount of smoke coming off the machine, things like that. I've done tests with soap and without soap, and it does work. And the other thing is it helps you clean the machine at the end of the day. It'll break up that stuff and knock off the machine and gets it off the conveyor. How often do I clean my fan out? So you're talking about the two fans on the back. They actually reverse. You'll see every once in a while they'll reverse and kick a cloud of dust out, so they kind of take care of themselves. But you want to look under the hood inside, and what happens a lot is stuff will fall down. When you go through trees and things like that, you'll go through leaves and stuff like that, and it'll get sucked inside and be sticking to the bottom of the intercoolers and the radiator, so you want to keep that stuff cleaned out. You can wash them out. That's not a bad idea. Just don't use like a pressure washer because it'll just destroy the fins. Oh, the VCS fan. Okay. At least every service, take it out. Even if it's not vibrating yet, take it out and chip it out. It's not hard. Sometimes I'll do it when I have a long break on trucks. I keep a little impact gun with me with a 13 millimeter already on it, so I can just get up there real quick, zip it out, take a screwdriver or something like that, and just chip off those hard materials that build up on the fan. If it starts vibrating, for sure you've got to do it after the shift or something else, because if you don't do it, it'll wipe out the support bearing. Or worse, I've seen it actually crack the area where the fan hooks to the shaft. It'll crack that out and it'll just grenade one day. That's no fun. And then the tubing going down from the machine to the hoses. If you run your water correctly, and this is something that I've been fighting with all the other operators at this company to leave the water on, because they turn the water off because they don't like that when they shut down that the water spills out the little, I call them duck bills on the bottom, those yellow flaps. If you got it set right, when you shut the fan off, you should get a little bit of water pour back out of those, and you'll see that it's nasty. And that's all the stuff that would normally be in the air. And I'm talking about the sprayer that's inside I call it the chimney, that goes up from the lower conveyor to that little plate you can take off on the top. That housing, that chimney that goes down. The one sprayer in there is what you want to have turned on. I think the control for that is the third from the left, and you just barely crack it on. And if you get no water out of there, then it means the nozzle's clogged up, and you got to get in there and take it apart and clean the nozzle. It's a quick connect, so once you use some WD-40 and channel locks and get let's see, let me real quick read what you said. We do ours bi-weekly. We always get that water to come out. Good. They have a nozzle up on the fan itself for when it's really bad. You can turn that on, and it has the valve on the conveyor. You probably know that. But you want to just barely crack that valve on, I think it's third from the left. You have the drum water, the lower conveyor water, and then that one. And if you have it adjusted right, like I said, it won't pour out while you're running, but it'll pour out right when the fan shuts off. And that's what you want. And if you do that, it will actually keep those hoses clean and the chimney clean. Like, you'll take it apart and look, and there's absolutely nothing stuck in there. And what happens then is it drops the fines out of it in that water, and it doesn't clog your fan anywhere near as fast, where you start getting that vibration. So when I have, SHS says, when I have the water fan on there, it always water coming out of the yellow thing. Are you using the water at the sprayer on the fan or the sprayer inside that housing? And if it's coming out, then you might just be running a little bit too much. Honestly, there's nothing wrong with it dribbling out a little bit when the fan is on. That's fine too. And you're talking one spray nozzle, and that's not going to really affect how much water you use or how fast you use up your water. One extra little sprayer makes no difference, but a lot of times people just don't like seeing that water pour out. And then what happens is they get clogged hoses, they get a vibrating fan, and that's no good. We have a few machines that actually have the solenoid on the fan. For some reason, those are going out, and then the fan won't turn on at all. And we end up having to, one, take the solenoid and everything completely apart and free it up, try to get it to work again. Or we just been replacing them because we think since all of them have been going out, it must just be a bad run of those. Because honestly, I've never even seen them go out until I came to this company. The one company before, they always worked. So when I have the water off fan, there's always water pouring out the fan inside the housing. Okay, so you're talking about the water down below. Or are you talking about the one that sticks in between the rubber hoses on top? The spray, yeah. If you run the one on the fan, it'll work to cut the dust down, but it's not doing anything for you for keeping those hoses clean. You'll get a little bit to run back out of the high side from the little yellow piece to the fan, but it's not. The important part is to get water coming out on the upper part of the hoses that slide up in the machine. And if you've never used it, it'll almost always be clogged. And you got to take that quick connect out, pull that little U-shaped metal hose out, take the nozzle off and chisel it all out and get it clean. And then I usually plug it in and leave that top plate on, or off, I should say, and then turn it on and make sure it's spraying before I put it all back together. And if you leave it on just cracked, it'll never clog again, and it'll work great for you. Bolts wouldn't even really tighten anymore due to the housing being rusted out. Yeah, that's a problem. They used to have, I don't know why they changed it. It used to be studs sticking out of the conveyor and nuts and washers up there, and we never had that problem. Now they have them thread down into nut certs in the conveyor, and we're having that issue. So bad design by Workin. They need to go back to the studs. And that was always nice too, because it would line up for you when you stick the fan back on. Yeah, they do seem thinner. I don't know why they did that. It makes no sense to me. It was much better with the stud sticking up. Worst come to worst, you could always do that. Maybe go reach around from the inside, and you might. I'm not positive about this. This might be a hack you can try if it works. You can screw bolts up from the inside through that nut cert and make studs, or drill it out and tack weld it in place. Maybe that might work. Yeah, that fan is really important. If you don't have it, it's like going back to old school, the W2000s and stuff like that, where you didn't have a fan. And all that crap in the air and blowing back on you, it's no good. You come home covered in black. And the soap will help with that too. If you have a little bit of soap in your housing and it's spraying up in there, that dirt won't stick to anything. It lubricates it pretty good. That's the other good thing about using soap in your water. It lubricates the teeth. Because what wears your teeth out, like probably 75% of what's wearing the teeth out isn't that teeth actually hitting the asphalt and cutting. It's the heat that's built up. Because once they get hot, they get like a couple thousand degrees on impact. They cool off really quick because it's rotating. That's why you can touch them when you open the thing. But then they get so hot that it actually weakens the carbide, and that's what causes the wear. You wouldn't think, but that's the reason why the teeth wear out. Plus they stop spinning when you have weak water. So ours is trying to turn on, making a horrible squeal. I think the bearing went. Yep, that's probably exactly what happened. You got to grease those too. They have a grease circ on top, and grease it until you get grease coming out of. Normally if you grease it pretty good, then you use it. The next time you use it, you'll get grease coming out of the relief hole on the bottom, and it's meant to be that way. That's how you purge the bad grease out. So use a little laundry detergent and dish soap. Dish soap will work. Dish soap is good for you, but it's not good for the pavers. I'd recommend laundry soap, just the cheap stuff, whatever you can get that's cheapest. If you get it by the gallon, it'll last you forever because you're only putting like a half a cup in for a whole tank of water. You can put a little more in on the last tank of water when you're going to wash down. That'll help you out. So I think it's likely from the housing being loose and it threw the bearing out. And now finally went after replacing the housing. Yeah, it's a chain reaction once one thing's happening, but keeping that thing clean so it doesn't vibrate, even if you're not running water, I mean, so be it. It's not going to work for you in the long run, but you'll have to chisel that fan out more often. Even running water, I mean, it happens. It's pulling all that fine material through it, and it's going to cake up eventually. But you'll know when it's ready. It'll start vibrating. And then one cool thing you can do on the new machines, if you have the option for it, I know it's an option, they don't all come with it, but I think it's kind of, at least in California, the machines we get here, it's pretty much standard. They order them that way. That has the segmented spray bar where you can turn off sections of it. And that's awesome because you can keep the water turned up all the way. And when you make like a second pass, it's only a half pass. You can turn off part of the spray bar. I usually just turn off, no matter how skinny of a pass I'm making, I just turn off the right side or left side, whichever side is on the zero, and it'll keep you from pouring water on the ground. CLR as an additive to water system when cutting. I've never tried that, to be honest with you. I bet it would work. That's CLR is mostly oxygenating, like a hydrogen peroxide, I think, in the water. You're in Canada, okay. Yeah, that's nice because you can leave the water at 100% and just turn off segments of the bar so you don't flood the ground. And then they never really know that I'll turn the water down, it's flooding the ground, and you can turn off that half and that's fine, instead of just turning down the whole thing. And you want as much water on that drum as possible. A lot of times they'll be like, run dry, run it with little water, we're paving right behind you. And it's like, no, you're not. You're going to sweep it, you got to prep it, you got to do all kinds of stuff. It'll be dry by then. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll turn the water off until the drum just hits the ground, and then I'll turn it back on. Leave it on until the machine's set all the way in the cut, and then I'll turn it off, creep forward a little bit, and then turn it back on right away, and it'll save it from leaving that big puddle in the beginning. For water on a 2-inch cut, all the way. Always run the water all the way if you can, as much as possible. Even if worst case scenario, you got to leave the water off for like the first 5 or 6 feet and then turn it on so it doesn't leave a puddle. That's still better than turning it down and cutting all day long with it turned down. You'll notice a huge difference in your tooth life. Sometimes it's inevitable. I guess you got to turn it down if it's too wet, but it's rare. The pavers will complain about it, but if they say turn it down, and you just kind of reach over and pretend you're pushing the button, and they're usually happy with that. And you say, I did. I don't know what's going on. Just play stupid. They're not the ones that are going to get under there and change the teeth at the end of the day. You are. So it's just saving yourself work. But like I said earlier, keeping your holders in good shape makes a huge difference on tooth wear too. As soon as the tooth starts kicking sideways in there, it's not going to spin anymore, and you're going to wipe your teeth out. So in short, as much water as you can get away with is what you want. And you guys are all pretty seasoned operators. I know I've talked to some of you before, so you already know when you see the white streaks behind you, you need to stop, fix that tooth. If you let it go too much, it's going to get through that carbide and wipe that tooth out. By the time you feel it banging hitting the ground, it's already too late. So Corey, how'd you get your seat? You talking about how I got in the business or how I got to where I am now? HS, when I'm milling with the fan on and water, there's always smoke coming out the sides of the lower conveyor. So something's clogged up if you're getting smoke down below. So what I would do is pull off one of the hoses on the bottom and look up in the machine and see if it's all built up and nasty in there. And if it's not, then take apart the little access hatch on the top and look down in there. Sometimes it creates like a big kind of booger of material right there and just choking those hoses off. And you want to just knock that out of there and it'll make a big difference. Especially if you're not running water into that area to keep it clean, you're going to have to clean it out by hand. I would do that once every week, a couple weeks at the most. Yeah, that's Tyler, that's exactly what I think. That's what happens. You just clean them out. If you check the fan itself to see if the blades in the fan are clogged up. So Corey, to answer your question, I've been doing this since I was 18. I had a friend that was working for a milling company and they needed help with traffic control. So I got in the company that way doing traffic control and just slowly worked my way up on the machines. By the time I was 19, maybe 20, I was running a machine full time. That was what I was doing. By the time I was 19, I was running ground and running the 4-foot grinders. So to check the blades, HS, you're going to want to pull that ring of bolts out on the fan and pull the whole thing up. You don't have to take the hoses off or anything. Just pull the whole thing up and look at them, and you'll see right away if they're clogged up or not working right. It'll have like a on the back side of the fan blade, there'll be a buildup of material. And once you chip it out, you'll see that, and it, even if it's built up a little bit, that fan can't scoot as much air through the blades, and then that is what causes it to have a weak vacuum. And you can stick your head down in there and look and see if anything else is clogged up. Yep, exactly, Tyler. Pull the fan from the top and look inside. Something's not flowing enough air, or you've got some kind of skirting. If you ever take the lower conveyor out, there's these flaps of rubber that hang down, and those tend to get destroyed. And the purpose of that is to seal as much of the conveyor as possible so that fan can pull the material out. So if those get wiped out, your fan's not going to work as good because it's pulling air from the top of the lower conveyor as much as the bottom. And that can cause it also. Downside is the only way to replace those is to drop the lower conveyor down, and pretty much no one's going to do that just to fix them. But if you ever destroy your lower belt and have to take it apart, that's a good time to change those flaps. They get destroyed from chunks going up the conveyor. Yep, glad I could help. Since we got a few in here commenting, what's your most common breakdown? Just out of curiosity. Workings don't break down often, but what's the most common thing that's happened? Just out of curiosity. For me, it's almost always something electrical. Like the lights. I'll have a short in the lights and go to work a night job and find out a segment of my light, because there are like 3 different circuits for the lights, and I'll get like no lights on my conveyor, no lights on the back of the machine. I have to go in there and chase a fuse, and then if that doesn't work, I have to take all the ends apart. You can shut the machine off, and you can use a multimeter and touch the center and touch the outside, and if it goes off, then you know you got a short in there. That happens sometimes. HS buttons on top panels, yep. You know, the machines with the canopies like I used to use up north, all the controls last so much longer because it's not getting the sun baking on them and crap stuck in them. Yeah, Tyler, a skinny guy can climb up in there. Yeah, that might be possible. Have to be a really skinny guy. If you really wanted to do it, it's not that hard if you have a forklift or something to drop the upper conveyor off and drop that bar that the conveyor sits on and just lower it down enough. The front moldboard will pivot and you can lower it down enough to get up in there. I mean, it's a good half a day's work, but if you really want to keep everything working good, it'll fix it. It'll make a big difference. And you can go, to make it work a little better too, you can go into, push the home button, and then I think it's settings or setup, can't remember, and then go to conveyor, and there'll be an adjustment where you can adjust the fan speed and turn the fan up and down. You can actually make that a quick button too on the bottom, so you can adjust it on the fly. The relay on that system. Are you talking about the relay for the fan, or are you talking about a relay for the lights like I was talking about earlier? So Ron, you had an issue with the machine not lowering parallel to the ground. Did you get it fixed and have what they found, or did you just live with it? And did it start doing that, or did it always do that from the time it was new? There's a couple of things you can adjust. Well, you can't, but you have to get an IPR code to get in the machine to fix it. But that's supposed to be something that gets fixed at the dealer when they receive a machine if it's not right. And it's common. They don't always lower right. One side of the machine's heavier than the other, so it'll lower crooked if you don't go in and adjust it. If it had done it from new, you have to have the dealer go in with an IPR code, and you can basically adjust the speed of the left and the right until it works the way you want, until it goes down level. There'll be, when you first go in and look at it, there'll be different numbers from left to right, and that's because, like I said, one side of the machine's heavier than the other. The side with the drive and everything, all that, it's heavier. Oh, the relay for the lights. Well, it's good to know. I've never had to deal with that, but if I ever have that issue again, I'll take a look. So recommend running the fan. 80% is usually enough, but you can crank it up higher. But just, for me, it just makes logical sense to not run it any faster than I have to. But you can speed it up. And when everything's clean, it'll blow some air. Like, seriously blow some air. And I found that I've turned it down sometimes if the stuff's blowing back in my face. Turning it down is better than turning it off. Yeah, Ron, the parallel to surface, resetting that would do it. That's more of telling the machine where all the cylinders are so that it knows where to keep the machine level. To do that, you set the machine down on 0 with the automatics on, and sometimes you have to bump the back end of the machine up or down when you turn that system off, and then bump the machine up and down until you get it sitting level, or I like to set them squatting in the back just a hair, and then hold that button until it flashes, and that'll reset it. That'll also reset your MDI too, if you don't have a newer model with the newer software where you can actually fine-tune it in the Level Pro. Yep. That should have fixed it. I don't know if you guys like to run yours level or run squatted in the back just a hair, but it seems to help the back door work better when it's squatted in the back just a little bit, especially when you're in deep cuts. Because what you'll find out in deep cuts is if you're running nose down, your cylinders in the front will bottom out and you won't have as good a grade control. If you run it squatted a hair, because the back tracks are always down in the hole, then your front tracks will be up a little higher. The front of the machine will be up a little higher and it'll have more range to move. They used to be a bigger deal on the I machines than the FIs. Has anybody tried adding soap to your water? Just curious. You know where that really helps too, adding soap to your water, and you want to add it a little heavier, is when you're digging dirt. And you'll know it too, because the dirt, instead of coming out all powdery and fine, the dirt will start coming out in little balls because it's getting rolled up in there and it doesn't stick to the drum. Just turn it on where it just soaks your drum really good before you put it in the ground, and the soap will keep the dirt from sticking to the drum and packing in. So what's the cause? Yeah, the old Road Tech days especially, or the older workings that didn't have the automatic. So the cause of the scraper gate not going down even, it'll go up even but not down even. You need to adjust the valves. You say you've already tried that, but I have a video on that. Basically open the valves all the way up, all the way open, and then start with either up or down, whichever you want, and slow down the side that moves faster. If you got it where it's going down really slowly, you'll have that problem. But open them all the way up, and then raise the back door, and if one side's going up faster, restrict that side, turn that valve in, and then go to pushing it down. Raise it all the way up so it's square, and then push it down and see if one side's going faster, and then turn that side down. So Tyler, you run Dawn? Okay. I don't know about it affecting the pavers that much, but I've heard that, and I've ran into it one time, but they sprayed the oil and it didn't stick. It just kind of ran off. Yep, Norman, okay. Change to Kennametal from Road King. Kennametal makes good teeth. We use the X-Cal teeth, and ones with a double carbide, so it has the tip of the tooth carbide, of course, and then on the body it has a ring of carbide. Are you public or private? So we're, I think, a little of both. We do public works projects and we do our own jobs too. But what I mean by our own jobs is the jobs that we bid. So we'll bring in the grinding, sweeping, and usually a mini grinder also for detail. So that's kind of our own gig, and the contractor is just supporting us, but it's all on us. And then we also do rental, where they just rent the grinder with operator for the day. And then those will be like private contractors. Is the bottom one up and the top valve down? I forget, Tyler, are you talking about an FI or an I? I have to scroll up in the chat. If you look at the plate where the valves are, so you have the four valves that are in a cluster at the top. And if you look in between them, there's an up arrow and a down arrow stamped into it, or punched out. So the bottom valves control down and the top valves control up. If you have the valves that are on the actual cylinder, then let me think about it. It's the bottom one controls down and the top one controls up still. It's actually controlling the fluid evacuating the cylinder, not the fluid going into the cylinder, if that makes sense. Yeah, and the reason we use the ring carbide teeth, it does help on the asphalt mills to have the body not wash out as fast. I personally still think they don't rotate as good as the teeth without it, because I think that body wearing a little bit helps the tooth spin. But in soft material like dig outs, it does help. But the reason we do it is because we knock out all our old teeth and we save them and we run them in the mixers, the pulverizers, where the tip isn't as important as the body. So it can have a completely wore out tip, but the body with that ring carbide works well in the pulverizers. So HS, why does the drum turn when using the little device you hook up under the machine in the back? What device are you talking about? Are you talking about the little pincher to take the teeth out, or what device are you talking about? Or why doesn't, I meant, okay, there you go, I see that. So again, which device are you talking about? Yeah, the FI, Tyler, okay. So yeah, you're going to have that little cluster of 4 valves on top. Back them all the way out counterclockwise, and then slow down the faster side. And that should cure your problem. Worst come to worst, if one side's still not going down evenly, you can also open that side up just a hair more. Even though that'll make it go down crooked when you're not in the ground, it may help it go down when you're in the cut. So HS, you're talking about the little square thing you use to turn the drum with, the one with the magnet on the end of it. Generally, if it's not turning, you have a broken wire or a broken button. If you take that thing apart, it has those old-fashioned little switches that clip in place, the red and the green, and you probably got one that's bad. 9 times out of 10, it's a wire and that coiled cord that's broke. Another way you can turn the drum, and I felt stupid because a long time I never knew it did it, is it kind of sucks. You got to climb out from under the machine, but if you want to make sure it's not the drum turner itself and then it's that box, the 2 favorite buttons on the side panel, I think it's number 2 and number 1, but there's a rocker switch for the favorite buttons. That'll turn the drum. It's like on the bottom, sort of center, a little bit to the right. That's a good idea too. Try it on another machine. I've always found it's a broken wire more often than not, because if it's the little switches inside, it'll turn one way but not the other. They very rarely both go out at the same time. And yeah, Tyler, some machines don't have that feature, but if you got the box with your machine, that feature is probably turned on. And if it has the little wheel and the cylinder inside where the drive is on the bottom, then you know it's got it. It'll also have a valve block for it on the front of the housing on the outside, you can see right behind the ladder. Try the button, HS, try the button on the actual side control panel on the machine and see if the drum turns. That way you can eliminate that and know it's the box. And then I'd take the 4 screws out on the box and pull the cover off and look inside, make sure nothing's coming off in there. But like I said, very rare, I mean, it'd be almost 1,000,000 to 1 chance that both of those buttons would go out at the same time, so it would only turn one way. You could take apart the plug on the other side, I guess, and see if you have a wire that came out of it. But if it doesn't turn on the outside, then I would look for a fuse maybe, or a bad coil on the valve block for it. Yeah, I guess you could run a circuit test on the box. You could pin it out on the plug and figure out which one's supposed to connect when you push the button. I wish I had parts to show. If I actually had all these parts, I could just show it on camera. It makes it so much easier. And sorry I haven't been doing these live streams too. I wanted to make mention of that, but I just been so busy. I've been working a lot of weekends. That only gives me one day at home, so my Sundays get full with honeydews and projects. That's a good idea. Use the fork to pull it. It's a lot easier than grabbing the top and putting your foot against it and hanging on it to turn it. Yeah, that's a good idea, Norman. You can try that too. A lot of times it's not pushing against the drive pulley on the bottom hard enough, or the rubber on that little drive pulley is shot. I've had both happen. I've had the rubber just get shredded off of it for whatever reason, and I've had it also where I had to loosen the bolts and adjust it so that it made tighter contact with the pulley on the bottom. So is it common practice for most of you guys, do you spot out your teeth or do you change the whole rack of teeth at once? Just curious. Where I'm at, we'll spot in used teeth that are the same length during the shift, but at the end of the shift, we just change them all, even if some of them are still good. But again, that's because we reuse the teeth, but I understand, like the company I worked before where we didn't do that up north, they pretty much I'd spot in used teeth and wait till the whole drum was shot, and then I'd change them all. Once it got to a point where I knew it wouldn't make it through the whole next day, I'd change them all. So much better for the holders that way. Yeah, HS spot in used teeth. Yeah, spot them in, they're around the same length, and then change the whole thing when the whole drum is shot. Because if you put dull teeth in with new teeth, the dull teeth will wear the holders faster. There's more load. Then you never get your pattern back right. That's like a pet peeve of our mechanic, is spotting in teeth. He hates it. People do it too much and then it wears the holders uneven and then your pattern never is the same again. It just makes you look more professional when you have a good pattern behind the machine. I've seen some grinders that just have the most haggard pattern and it just makes you look like your machine's junk even when it's not. Cool, HS. Glad that was a help for you. Refresh my memory. You work for Bostik, right? It's been a while since I did the live stream. I've forgotten a lot. So Corey, what makes a good ground guy? Somebody who can pay attention and kind of understands what you're supposed to do. If they're running the grade for you, then they need a second guy on the ground to teach them how to do it. And, other than that, I find one that's willing to pay attention, that stands up in front of the machine and not lollygagging around behind the back of the machine or out smelling the flowers somewhere. They should be up in front of the machine, not under the conveyor, but I like my ground guy to stand right just ahead of the machine where they can keep an eye out for iron and direct the trucks. So somebody who's going to pay attention is the main thing. Even if they aren't that savvy on like how the machine runs, just someone who's going to pay attention to what they're doing so you don't break something. So when doing 2 inches, I like to do a full drum change every 50,000 square feet. Really? That's good, I guess. Shoot, I've done jobs 150,000 square feet, 200,000 square feet where the drum made it through the whole shift. I guess it just depends on the hardness of the material and all that. And we're blowing through the time today. I only got about 10 minutes left, so anybody's got some questions, get them in now. Wow, you're going to have to convert that to feet for me. 20,000 M2. So that's 20,000 square meters. You probably run your machine in centimeters too, huh? Sometimes I kind of wish we would. It makes it so much easier. The metric system is easier to figure out. It's so much better than tenths. Tenths of a foot is a pain in the neck. Centimeters seems so much easier. Caltrans down here for a while was putting their grades in centimeters. Then they learned that most guys had no idea how to use it. Millimeter, okay. $150K, I'm working too hard. It all depends on the teeth, man. I've been out on some hard asphalt where, yeah, I mean, I was just on a job on the 405 freeway out here in LA, and we were cutting 5 inches deep, and we probably did 100,000 square feet, something like that. And we had 2 machines, and both machines, we changed the drum 3 times to get through it. The asphalt was so hard. I tried to convince the contractor to let us cut it half and half, but they would not do it. I even proved it. I'm like, look, the machine is moving at 15 feet a minute because it's so hard. But if I come up to 2.5 inches, I can roll at 60, 70 foot a minute and even faster on the second pass. So if you have one machine cut 2.5 inches and I chase him in the same pass and go the other 2.5 inches, we'll get twice the square footage done. And even though I did it for like a couple hundred feet and proved it, they just couldn't wrap their mind around the fact that backing up would actually make it faster, if that makes sense. Even the machine will have a pop-up that'll tell you that the machine thinks if you cut it in 2 passes, it'll go faster. The machine's smart enough to tell you that. $60,000 to $75,000 square feet, yeah. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with changing them earlier, just your boss may not like it. SoCal keep you busier than Northern California? Yes and no. We don't have as much of a winter here, but it still slows down in the wintertime. But not as bad as up north. Up north, it pretty much, the only thing you're going to do in the wintertime is like parking lot jobs. It slows way down, if not stops, for a good 2-3 months up north. So we're down here, the work kind of trickles in more and stays a little bit more stable. Right now, I feel busier than I was up north. A lot of double shifts and weekends. Now, if I can just convince our dispatch to not tell me I'm working Saturday on Friday afternoon, that would be nice. But so far, I haven't convinced them of that. Like I said, I've been working a lot of weekends and a lot of out of town work. So I'm either traveling home on Sunday or just staying in a hotel and going somewhere else. December to March, that's a long winter. I used to like that. I'd just save a bunch of money during the summer and work my tail off and then have enough money on savings to just actually take a couple months off. But I haven't been able to take a couple months off in many years. Because when I'd stop milling, they'd have me in the shop working with the mechanic. So pretty much always stayed busy. Shop time was volunteer, though. I was able to kind of choose if I wanted to do it or not. It's bad in Northern Cal this season. You know, I've heard that. I keep in touch with the company I used to work at, and they said there's been a weird season. They'd have really busy weeks and then weeks where they only put 1 or 2 machines out. Very sporadic. HS, so you talking about not being able to run your side plate on the base rock or on the shoulder because it goes up and down a lot? Normally what I do when I'm cutting a road like that is I run the sensor in front of the drum on that little cylinder, the rabbit foot. I'll run that on the asphalt. That way I'm not using the side sensor. If not, there's really no good way to do it. In Vancouver, working shop all winter. Yep. Keeps you busy, keeps some money coming in. It's not much fun though. But I guess having a good old 9 to 5 is kind of nice. People look at me funny when they say like, "Oh, when are you going to get off today?" And I'll be like, "I don't know. When the job's done. Could be 4 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours. Who knows? You get off when the job is done. It's not a 9 to 5. I do like getting paid 8-hour minimum for a couple hours work though. That's nice. I love those days. It's expensive in Vancouver, huh? Interesting. I wonder how it compares to the Bay Area. And down here, down here down here in LA, if you don't make at least 150 grand a year, you're starving. Any tips for cutting an elevated curve on a slope? You're going to have to give me a little more information. What do you mean on an elevated curve? Yeah, so what I'm doing, Corey, is I pay what they call the Adobe dues. So I'm still in Local 3. I have to pay my Local 3 dues, and then I pay $5 a week to 12 to work here. Wow, family homes over 1 million. Wow. Honestly, that's about the same as it is here. Up in the Bay Area, up north, it's not as bad. But if you live in the cities on the outskirts, you're probably looking at 500 to 800 grand for a house. FX, you're on the paving side, never run a mill. If I wanted to buy an entry machine, what's the most versatile size in your opinion? I would run the half lane grinder myself. You know, a lot of guys will say that they like to use the 4-foot grinders, but I find that the The big machines are actually more maneuverable and can get into more areas. The only downside is the drum being in the middle, you can't back into corners. But you're going to get much better grade control out of a big machine, and it's more productive. The 4-foot machines are good if you just do parking lots and things like that. The maintenance on them is a lot lower. The fuel is a lot lower. But if you can swing it, I would get a 6.5-foot drum or a 7-foot drum. Scale is lower down there, isn't it? I think it's a couple dollars lower. They pay me over scale at the company I'm at right now, but so it's kind of comparable. So it's a little bit lower of your take-home pay is a little bit lower, but the benefits are a little bit higher, I think. But Local 3 pays way better on the night pay and way better on the vacation pay. I think the vacation pay down here is only like $2-3 versus like almost $6 up north. Maybe it's even higher now. And the night pay down here is only $1 an hour versus I think $5 an hour or something like that in 3. It's been a little while since I've been in 3, but cool. Glad you like the channel, FX. Yeah, another Canadian. 40% to taxes. Wow. We're probably not much different. I just choose not to find out that number because I'd probably cry. $398. Is that for night pay? What company do you work for, Corey? Just out of curiosity. You may have told me before if you've been on here, but I forget. Vacation and sick. Okay, in that situation, Norman, I would recommend if your machine has it, running the rabbit foot. It's a very, very versatile sensor to have. You can also run a sonic sensor, plug that in, and run that off the front if you can get an arm swung in there. So Corey, you came from mining and dirt going to PRS. Yeah, we have PRS down here. They're pretty big. They're pretty big down here. I don't know where you're located in Northern California, but I know they just put a yard in Roseville, I think, last probably, 4 or 5 years ago. I worked for Delta Grinding out of the East Bay. Okay, up and ready. It's funny how much this channel has grown. I talked to some of my coworkers up there at Delta, and they're like, yeah, man, everybody knows about your channel now. I go out and even paving contractors are talking about it and stuff like that. It's kind of neat. Kind of humbles me that so many people are watching it now. And puts the pressure on to make stuff interesting so people will watch it. I just wish I had more time to do like the how-to stuff. But I've been mostly just recording my jobs and talking about them and trying my best to put content out there. So I appreciate the comments because that gives me a chance to explain things and stuff like that. It's the cost of your free healthcare, Tyler. Yeah. You're going to make you pay for it one way or another. I still think the healthcare system in Canada is better than here, though. We're big Disneyland freaks, and I had a conversation with some people from Canada at Disney, and they were telling us that they think that the healthcare system is, even though you still pay for it one way or another, it's better than in the States. But you're kind of screwed, Norman, on that with the slope changing if you don't have something you can read off of. Yeah, I have kind of heard that. It takes a little bit of waiting. What is ACR or something like that on the 200i? I don't know. I've never heard of that. Multiple years for surgeries? Oh my god. Okay, I changed my mind. Maybe it is better here. Looks like I'm buffering. I don't know if I'm still in the system or not. You guys still able to see me? I'm getting a scrolling wheel on my feed. Okay, now I'm back. This YouTube thing, you just never know if it's actually working. I can see myself, but I have no idea if it's working. FX, that sounds terrible. Well, guys, I think my YouTube is fading. I don't know if you can still see me or not, but I'm gonna cut out of here. It's giving me some errors saying I'm overloading the buffer or something, so I'll try to do one next Sunday. I'll put out, if you look at my channel and you see one scheduled, then you'll know that I'm gonna do it. I'm glad I could help. It's nice to get on here and talk to other people that actually understand the industry and stuff. We don't have very many people to talk to outside of our own company, so. Stains of the machine or grease. WD-40 in a rag. Spray it on, let it soak, wipe it off, usually is what works. All right, guys, I'm going to cut out. We'll see you next Sunday, hopefully. If not, leave some comments and I'll see them and I'll respond to them as quick as I can. Be safe. Talk to you all later.